name is John. I'm one of the community managers on the Company of Heroes franchise, and thank you everyone for joining us today for developer Q&A, the first of many, I'm hoping. I imagine we'll be doing a lot more of these once Company of Heroes 3 has launched. And I'm also very excited to be here with David Littman. Liddy, can you maybe introduce who you are and what do you do on Company of Heroes?
Sure thing, John. So I'm VP of production at Relic. I'm basically in charge of the Company of Heroes franchise. So that's obviously our back catalog games. Very importantly, Company of Heroes 3 and future things we're going to be doing as well.
Awesome. I imagine you've been very, very busy. I think the last time I had you on one of these was maybe right after we announced Company of Heroes 3. So it's probably been a year and a half. So it's been quite a year. How's the last year and a half been treating you?
It's been, I mean, the world is definitely changing and evolving, and along with it is how we make games. And at Relic, the one thing we pride ourselves in is having great people that make great games, and that's what we've been doing. And the last year and a half since we announced has been a whirlwind of action.
Right.
Not just because we're making a game and trying to finish the game, but also because of our efforts and work through co-development with making sure we're talking to players and having that conversation. And that adds a whole new element to producing a game in a great way.
Mhm.
But it also can get there you end up with a lot of priorities and a lot of things to do because you want players to be happy. And so
Mhm.
that's what the last year and a half has been, is finishing this game and making sure that we meet the player expectations.
And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. A lot of people have a lot of questions about our changed launch dates, so we'll definitely get to those. But before we kind of jump into things, a quick reminder that if you want to stay up to date on everything that we're doing with Company of Heroes, you can follow us on your channel of choice at Company of Heroes, or find us at companyofheroes.com for everything else. So what are we going to talk about today? We put out the call for questions on all of our channels and on our forums about hey, we moved the launch date. What do you want to know about that? So we're going to be answering some of your top questions on that today. And just a quick heads up that we're going to be talking about Company of Heroes kind of at a high level. And in the next couple of weeks, or actually 2 weeks exactly from now, so at the end of October, I'm going to be joined by the gameplay team, and we'll be kind of getting into the nitty gritty about the multiplayer and the US forces. So stay tuned for that. So today, high level stuff. If we don't get a chance to answer your question, please throw it in the chat or throw it on the forums or in the Discord, and we'll get to it when we can. But Lydia, I guess we might as well kind of start with the first one and the big one. We've moved Co3's launch date from November, and we're now going to be launching on February 23rd on Steam. So why did we change this launch date, especially so close to that original window? And was this kind of a hard decision for the team to make?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Has a lot of facets to it.
Yeah.
But what it comes down to is that this is an incredibly important game for Relic and Sega. It's an incredibly important franchise that we want to continue for many, many, many years to come. And so, when we look at it like that, what's the most important thing? The most important thing is coming out with the best game possible for our core fans and beyond. And as I mentioned, we're getting so much feedback. We've done 3 public demos of the game. We have a community council who's playing the game all the time. And with all the feedback we're getting, we felt like we weren't quite there yet. We weren't quite where we wanted to be. We were close, but we didn't, get over that hill where we just feel like, okay, we're ready. And so, the team sat down and we just really looked at the game and said, what do we need to be great? What do we need for the best game? We talked to Sega, who's incredibly supportive about putting out the best games possible. And with all that feedback, when we looked at the plan and what we needed to include in the game and how much time it was going to take to polish the last bits of the game, we needed a few extra months. and that's
Mhm.
the bottom line. And it's a tough decision. It's not a great decision to move a game, especially closer to launch like that. But it is the right decision
Mhm.
without a doubt. Our goal is to meet and exceed player expectations, and to do that, we need a polished game with the right features in it for our players. So yeah, that was the decision, and we all believe in it, um, and it's been great since we were able to make that announcement, because we were able to put a new plan together of exactly what needs to happen to get out in February with the game that players expect and more.
Yeah, and you were talking about player feedback and how that kind of informed some of the decisions that we were making. And I remember when I was first hired by Relic, almost 2 years ago at this point, and they were kind of laying out the plan like, hey, we're going to announce this like over a year before we launch, and we're going to do all these like public hands-on with the game, even in the pre-alpha stage. And I was like, that's nuts. I was like, no, nobody does that. What are we thinking? But I guess to your point, it was kind of incredibly important that we appeal to longtime fans of the franchise, while also sort of building on that. And I guess that was going to be my next question is like, how has the audience sort of informed a lot of those decisions? And like, when you think about our audience, sort of how do you think about the people that are going to be have played Co in the past, or that you want to play Co 3 in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So going to be a little bit of a long answer because there's a
Of
lot
course,
there,
go for it.
but we did announce early so we can get in at least three demos, which we did. And to be honest, one of the reasons we are moving the date is because there's so much amazing feedback in there, and we want to address as much as we can. We can't address all of it, but we want to address as much as we can. And so, um, when we think of it like that, um, we'd much rather get that feedback now than after launch. Like that's really the whole key to announcing early and having those demos is we're getting the hard feedback now. And so by the time we get to launch, the game is in a much better place for to meet player expectations. Without all those demos, without all the feedback back and forth, we're going to launch, and now okay, now what do players think? But we know what players think. We know a
Mhm.
lot about what players think because we're talking to them every day. So we feel really good about that piece. The next part of that question is, how do we look at our audience? And this is really important. The first audience we have kind of, who we're trying to, make this game for. In the middle of the circle is the core. And we define the core of people who are still playing Company of Heroes today. And there's over 400,000 players still playing monthly Company Heroes 2 and Company Heroes 1. Like, that's a huge number
Yeah.
for not having a game out in 9 years. And our community is amazing, absolutely amazing. Not afraid to tell us what they think, but also passionate and love playing the game. It's just such an incredible game with so much depth. I hear so many stories about there's people are still finding new strategies and new
Hmm.
tactics or new voice lines and all the, it's just amazing that our game has that. So we have to make sure that the core players are happy with the game and want to play the game and want to bring all their friends over to play the game. And if unless we do that, there's no reason to even look to try and get new audiences, because the core have been there for years, and we need to make sure they're happy first. Without a doubt,
Right.
everything we're doing is first make sure gameplay is amazing, multiplayer is amazing, and then we're also doing other things. And that's kind of the second piece of that, which is we do want to hit wider audiences. We do want more people to play this amazing franchise. And so we've put a couple features in the game that help that. And one is our, new campaign map, and one is full tactical pause. And those aren't for the hardest core players. They're for players who, may love strategy or may love a little bit more play an RTS at their own pace. But the great part about it is, in how we designed the game, was those two things don't have to mix. They're not all jumbled together. If a core player just wants to play multiplayer, against their friends or against people in automatch, they can do that. They don't
Right.
ever have to use those features, but they could certainly try. And so that's kind of one of the things that's most important to us, is making sure the core are happy with all the pieces of that they want to play, and that as they love the game, hopefully, they're, talking to players and trying to bring new players in and helping us do that. And they'll only do that if they love the game. And
Right.
that's why we moved the date, and that's why we're making sure the game is awesome. And then boom, we expand from there and bring in new players with some of those features.
Hmm. So when we were talking about player feedback and code development, I'm curious how you feel that player feedback has informed development at a high level, maybe over the last year or year and a half. Maybe what's your philosophy on how we approach that?
Well, I mean, the fact is we have over 250,000 players who've come to games together to make this game with us and help us make this game. And that was, I think I was talking to someone the other day about what have been some surprising things. And we knew we had all these amazing core fans, but to have 250,000, a quarter of a million players come to games together just to be part of the community before the game's even launched
Hmm.
is the first thing that just struck me as wow, this. I mean, we knew this community is amazing, but this is just incredible, and so the amount of feedback we're getting is the hard part because there's so much and we have to prioritize it.
Yeah.
And but our philosophy has been everything we're doing is informed by players, and I could prove that because a month into our when we started Company Heroes 3, I was the only person on the team before we built up this team. And the first thing we did was bring in our top 9 players from around the world. We brought in, our some mod makers and competitive players and casters, and they sat with us for a couple days and helped us um, figure out what this game was going to be. And another point is 3 of those people are now hired full time and work at Relic, so that's even
Yeah.
even more amazing. But everything we did there was informing what we were going to make, and we made a lot of big decisions there. But then we did surveys and we did other things, and we kept asking more and more people. And we did an interesting exercise in that first summit. I remember um, we they came in one day and we said, okay, you're all executive producers of Company Pharaohs 3,
Okay.
and we put up on the board 20 features we wanted, 20 big things
Yeah.
we wanted for Company Pharaohs 3, and everyone's like, okay, great, and I'm like, okay, now you got to prioritize them. They said, okay, we can do that, and then I said, out of the 20, you can only have 7 in the game. And that's when they said, "What? What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, that's game development. You can't do
Yeah.
everything." And it was really like, "Oh, okay, I get it." So it's really about starting with what's most important. And we did that. And again, we've built outwards
Hmm.
from there with more audiences and also more features.
I was going to ask about that process because that exercise with some of our players early on is very much like a hey, you're a producer, you have to make hard decisions, and you have limited resources and time and budget and people power. So I'm curious, like how those decisions kind of get made, like day to day, right? Because I imagine you and the rest of the team are having to make those types of decisions and point us sort of in the right direction while we're finishing the game. But throughout that process, how does that actually work? Is it just a matter of saying like, you know, these are like the 5 things that are most important for Company of Heroes, and everything else is secondary, and we'll get to them when we can, or like how do you even start with something like that when you're just trying to triage everything that you want to jam into a game?
Yeah. Wow, your questions have like my answers are like I feel like I need 20 minutes to give an answer to the question of that magnitude. But um, it does start like the first thing it starts with are the pillars of the franchise, without a doubt. Like this is a sequel. This isn't a game from scratch, a new IP from scratch, which may have a different set of plans and planning and direction. For a sequel, we need to first make sure that um, we stick to what makes this franchise great. And I know players worry about that all the time. Like a sequel comes out and it's like this doesn't feel like the others, and if it's too far away from what players expect, that's not good. And
Right.
we talk about the rule of thirds, which I think was a Sid Meier philosophy, which is when you make a sequel, it's a third needs to be about the same because people need to come there and be able to play it like they have in the past. A third is going to be improved because we need to listen and we need to improve the game all the time. And the last third needs to be new and interesting, to be able, why would you go over and change from the past games you were playing? So that was kind of our top philosophy. And then we have our pillars of the franchise, which I want to tell people it's, our first one is humanizing the battlefield, where the you have an emotional connection to your soldiers and to your units on the field, and
Hmm.
a lot of RTSs don't have that, and
Right.
that's why we have features such as retreat, and it's cheaper to retreat them than build new ones, and you have to. You start to have this connection, and we tell stories, and there's incredible voice lines, and all these things happening, so you care about them, and that's how it should be. You should care about your soldiers. And the next one's emergent moments. We have these evolving battlefields that start out beautiful and end up destroyed, and smoke and fire everywhere, and stories are told during the battles. And that's another amazing thing, and these moments happen that you never expected.
Yeah.
And when you make a game, our game is based on put in these amazing systems and then let the players work with those systems and come up with their own tactics and strategies. And that's a big part of that. And the final one is cinematic warfare, which is just, putting World War II on screen, and from movies you've seen, Saving Private Ryan, shows like Band of Brothers. We've always talked about that for years and years. But those the tactics that like flanking and cover and combined arms, like those come out in our gameplay, and they're super important. So it starts with that, right?
Hmm.
Like we have to make sure we're doing the right thing for a sequel. We have to make sure that we have our pillars are being met, and then probably the last piece, John, is like we said, making sure the core are happy, but then what are some new features we can add that can keep growing this incredible franchise? And that's where you're going to see some of those new features. So I think that's a good start. And then the key to it all is continuing to have that conversation with players to keep refining.
Right.
So the whole feature set itself was based on that first summit, a survey where I think we had 60,000 responses. I'm sure a lot of people watching this were in that survey, and that informed our game, and we kept going back and forth with our community, still are today, to make sure that it's the game people want.
Hmm. So going back to some of the player feedback that we've received, over the last little while, and throughout this process, um, can you maybe give us some examples of changes that the team has made or will make as a result
Mhm.
of that player feedback that we've seen?
Absolutely. So I think so this half feedback, as far as we were doing it no matter what, and then there's part of this answer is the 3 months extra. What does that give us?
Right.
So it's because a big part of the 3 months extra is to polish and bug fix, and continue to get in those features that players want. And so, and I jotted down a list here because there's a lot of things. First and foremost is polish and balance and tuning, just overall, like
Right.
everything that people need in an RTS with 4 factions at launch. There's a lot there in the gameplay. It's it's really about working with the community council and listening to and looking on social media what people are saying from the demos, as far as you know. Fixing abilities and tuning battle groups and making sure veterancy is what it needs to be, and the upgrades are what they need to be, and it wasn't hitting quickly enough. Like it takes time, and Matt, Philip, and the team have done an incredible job at working with the community to keep iterating on gameplay. And is it going to be perfect at launch? Absolutely not. But is it going to be really good and really fun? Yes.
Yeah, but
Um,
balance and meta is like one of those things that we work out like continually, right?
well, we still haven't gotten it right in Code 2, and it's been 9 years. So yeah, it's going to take a while. And the next thing is the campaign map. And, we had a lot of people playing the campaign. And one of the issues we had with campaign is our save load system wasn't working as quickly as we'd like. So it was hard to play through the whole thing, and we weren't getting the feedback as quickly as we wanted. And but now we're doing a lot more testing. We have a new supply system that really adds that kind of World War II feel of what's important. But then, better storytelling, and our detachment system. I've seen a few people online talk about how we removed the detachment system. That's not true at all. What we did was we streamlined it a bit so your detachments, which are kind of your specialists, medics and riflemen and people on the campaign map that could help you do things. They're in the company, and you could still send them out to build emplacements and do lots of stuff. But we streamlined it because turns were just taking a bit too long. We made camera improvements in the game. Probably the biggest thing people notice is the in-game HUD.
Hmm.
That was the toughest feature I've ever seen go through feedback. Our incredible UI UX team just kept coming up with new mock-ups to answer feedback, and videos that were made, AE and all these amazing videos that
Yeah.
kind of gave us a roadmap of what players really need. And that was after all the feedback we had gotten for years.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get right, and we think we landed in a great spot that's going to make a lot of people happy. We have WASD camera control in a keybind setting, so doing a lot of things. Those are small things, but we know our players want them. The overall look and feel, the lighting, higher fidelity lighting with new shaders. The game looks 10 times better network today than it did a couple months ago. We're changing voice lines for the Gurkhas based on feedback we've gotten. So all these things from big to small are being worked on and made better. Again, with player feedback to make sure we can have the best game at launch.
No, that's really exciting to hear, and like you said, it's the feedback has been like so overwhelming, but oftentimes when we look at it, the stuff coming in from players, the designers and the devs are more often than not saying the same thing, and we're just like, yeah, we totally agree. We need to keep iterating on these things and keep improving them. So it almost feels like we're kind of like all going in the same direction. It's just a matter of like, finding something that makes everyone happy, and ensuring that we have the time to, like you said, polish and bug fix and
Yeah.
finish the things that we need to do. I'm curious, Liddy, like over the last couple of years, has there been any player feedback that really maybe surprised you, or anything that you found like really interesting, since we announced Co 3?
It's been a lot. The first thing that surprised me the most was the fact that how many players have been involved. Like I
Right.
mentioned, there's 250,000 players signed up to this brand new website, for us, that, Sega's used, but Amplitude's used, but it was new to us, and so many people came over to help, and that was really, really um, made the team really happy that players want to help, and that was fantastic. One of the surprising things that started happening was, I talked about, like, first we need to please our core audience and make sure the core audience is happy with just the gameplay itself. Um, but then, we talked about these other features because we want to grow the franchise. We want to continue to, make a great game for years and years and years, that can be a good business as well. And what really surprised me, which really made me realize that our players understand our game and understand even our business, is that many players started talking to me about the fact that they want these new features even if they're not going to use them. They love the campaign map idea. They love the tactical pause. They love the fact that we're spending a lot of time with our first time user experience and tutorials. And I'm like, well, why do you want that so much? Like, you're not going to use any of that. And every single person said, well, the bigger the franchise grows, the better it is for them as well, because there's a bigger pool of players to continue to grow and play against and teach, and also the better the business does, the better it is for if they have a YouTube channel or a Twitch channel. And so now it really started to hit home that we are in this together, and that while we need to make sure the RTS and the core gameplay is amazing before even worrying about these other features, it's great to know that our players want what's best for the franchise and Relic and Sega, and that really hit home with this is what we're doing is important, and what we're doing matters,
Hmm.
and that it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and you and I actually had a chance to go to Gamescom this year, which was kind of refreshing because we haven't been able to do events for a couple of years, and we were actually there on the ground talking to longtime fans and players, people who had never touched the franchise before, top players like Loveness. We had a chance to chat with him for a bit. So it was really encouraging to be able to talk to those folks on the ground, and to sort of get their thoughts on like the direction that we're heading with the franchise. Did you have any fun memories or any good conversations while you're at Gamescom chatting with players?
Yeah, seeing some of our best players in the world there and getting to talk to them, over a couple drinks was fantastic. And I think we spent 2 hours. And I remember I was just jotting down notes on my iPhone and like sent them home to myself. And when I got home, I saw them all, and some of them were gibberish, but some of them were good.
Yeah.
And like it really made me understand what is making some of our top players tick and what they need at launch, for good multiplayer, and make sure, there's some kind of leaderboards to track things because that's their space. Like
Hmm.
some players, like multiplayer is their space. And so, I need to hear things from everybody, and hearing, from some of our best players, was an angle I don't always get in the last year and a half or so because we're doing so many other things. And so
Hmm.
it was really nice to get that and make sure we're understanding what core players want.
Yeah, I found it really refreshing talking to them, and especially people who had it was their first time playing Company of Heroes, and after 30 minutes with it, they're just like, yeah, I get it. I get what you're doing here, and this is really fun. So it's really encouraging to hear that kind of feedback.
Yeah, one thing about that is interesting as far as the date change too, is that what we realized, which is great news for us, is that when players played the game in a small setting, like a slice of the game that we were able to polish, such as the Gamescom demo, it was 98% positive. Like people just, this game is great, we love it, whether it was core players or new players. Um, so what that made us realize is we have something special here. But when we look at the entire game, that's not as polished as those smaller slices.
Mhm.
That's one of the main reasons why the extra time gives us. That's what the extra time gives us is time to polish and make the entire game as polished as those small slices.
Awesome. So, time for a tough question, Liddy. Is there any chance that we're going to move the launch date again, or are we set for February?
There's Well, I can't say zero chance because that's just not, you can't say that. But there's no chance we're moving,
Okay.
other than some world event that, who knows. But we have the date, we have the plan. There's no doubt in our minds that 3 months is the perfect timing because
Mhm.
we have everything mapped out. We know exactly how many bugs we're fixing every day. We know the new features, exactly what they are. We've committed to them. So if players want something new starting tomorrow, we're not doing that for launch. Like we are locked and loaded,
Yeah.
ready to go. And our team is so hard at work right now as we speak. Um, you know, fixing bugs, polishing the game, balancing multiplayer, doing everything we can to make the best game. And we will not stop until we launch that game
Yeah.
in February. So not a chance. It is staying right where it is, and we're super happy and can't wait for people to play it.
Sounds good. So I have two questions about that. The first one is a lot of players were kind of concerned. They were saying like, "Hey, February seems like a busy month for video games." Is there a reason that we chose that? Or, are we worried at all about launching in a crowded month? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um, I think most months are crowded, surrounding Christmas nowadays, right? September, October, November, December, January, February, and even into March now. And so what we decided was what's best for us, what's best for our fans, and we needed 3 months to polish the game. That was what when our incredible project planners, who, and I'll be the first to admit, and I take blame for this, that if we didn't stick our landing the first time, this time we're going to stick the landing. And so, you know, I think we're, you know, whether it's February or whether it was January, March, December, doesn't really matter. If we make an amazing game that people want to play, we feel great, and we know people will come and people will will want to play it
Yeah.
because the game is the game they want. And you know, I think the only thing that could get in the way of something like that is, Elden Ring type experience where that thing just, I mean, who wasn't playing that
Yeah.
game
Yeah.
last
For
year?
sure.
But I don't think there's an Elden Ring 2 this year,
Hmm.
and I
Yeah.
and so I'm sure there's great games out there, and I play so many games. I look forward to playing those games.
Yeah.
But I think we have a good spot, and we just need to nail the landing ourselves.
Yeah, I think I have a sneaking suspicion. I know what our fans are going to be playing in February, so not too worried about that. So following up on that question, I know you kind of already mentioned this. We're really focused on polishing and bug fixing. Can you maybe get into some of like the specifics about like what is it exactly that the team is going to be working on with this extra time? We're not adding anything, right? Like we're
Mhm.
no new content or modes or features or anything. It's just kind of refining what's there, right?
Yeah, so I mean, if I had to put a percentage to it, like 80% of our work right now is polishing, tuning, bug fixing, just fixing the game that was there.
Hmm.
That, like I said, in those small slices was really showing well, but we need to do that for the whole game. And when we talk about bug fixing, it's like that's part in the RTS, that's part in campaign map, that's a lot of UI UX and changes to the HUD and to the front end and lots of things like that. So it's mostly, yeah, that bug fixing and polish and balancing the multiplayer. And then the things I talked about, such as some of the features like WASD control or camera improvements or the in-game HUD changes, there's changes being made for some of those things based on feedback. But that's probably about 20% of what we're doing. But we're not adding new features. We're not trying to stuff things in. What's there is we know has the potential to be amazing, and that's what we're making sure happens.
So moving everything, by a few months obviously has, knock-on effects. So how is this going to affect our post-launch plans for Co3? Is everything just going to kind of shift a little bit, or is anything else going to happen as a result?
I think what people will see is we're going to have a little bit more um, support for the game and features post-launch that people are want and are asking for than we would have if we shipped in November. So it just gives our live service team a little bit more time to make some features, modding and things that we've been talking about, that, can get to a good place. There's some other things we're working on. We have, our goal is to support this game for years and years and years. And, I think the reason we know that can happen is because look at Co 2 and Co 1 that still have 400,000 players. Imagine if we support the game, all the time
Hmm.
with a true live service where we're supporting the game and fixing things and adding content all the time. So this extra time just gives us a little bit more time to work on our um, those features as well.
Yeah.
So it turns out to be good for everyone. And um, yeah, some things may get shifted, but for the most part, we get more. Now, not everything's going to be there, and when I say more, I just mean we have some great plans. I know we're talking to the community council about them to make sure that we're not just putting things out there that players won't like. But in the end, we have incredible plans. Can't wait to share them. And we think we're doing more than we've ever done before. And because if you think of our game now, it's the biggest game we've ever made. We have two campaigns. We have four factions at launch. We have like 140 units. We have 30, 40 missions in the
Hmm.
game. We like that's double, almost triple what we've had before. Like, so the game is so big
Mod
that
tools
we
at
want to
launch. I
support
can't,
that. Mod
like,
tools at launch,
yeah,
exactly. We've never had that before,
yeah,
and we're gonna keep working on those things. And so come support us and help us and guide us in what we want to build. At the same time, to be honest, we also have to run a business. We have to make sure that it's a healthy business and that you know people play and are engaged for a long time, and also that our business can keep supporting a huge team after launch to keep making content for single player and multiplayer.
yeah. So Liddy, I think we're getting close to wrapping up here because I know you're busy. You got to get back to it. But one of the last big questions that I think most of our players have had is are we going to go hands on with the game before we launch? So I'm wondering if you can speak to that at all.
Absolutely can speak to that. The answer is yes. We plan on doing a multiplayer, uh, I guess we
Like a
call it
test?
a
Yeah,
test, a multiplayer test, and that we'd like that to be as big as possible. It's definitely going to be public. We just have to figure out like what size
yeah,
group we can do it with, and the goal there is to really show off the game, get people to be able to play it. But also give more feedback, and that feedback will be for post-launch. Like that
hmm
feedback would be, hey, the balance on this is not great, and then our first few updates, right, within the first couple weeks of launch, could have some fixes and changes in there. So the expectations there are we get all this feedback, we parse it out, and then we continue to
yeah,
make the game better post launch. But yeah, our goal is for as many people to play multiplayer as possible. And the other thing it gives us is the ability to test our tech and our servers.
right,
And
yeah,
we have Relic Link, and we have this amazing server team that supports so many games right now. And we need to make sure that this game is just running like butter, and players find games easy and can play easy, and there's not a lot of disconnects or any desyncs or any crashes. And so if there are a few problems in that test, great. I'd rather them be there
right,
than
yeah.
day one at launch.
Yeah, no, that's great news. We'll definitely have more details on that in the next few months here, folks. So Lydia, I think we'll end things there. Again, a quick reminder, everyone, if you want to stay up to date with everything that we're doing, follow us on your social channel of choice at Company of Heroes, discord.gg/Company of Heroes, companyofheroes.com, or follow us here on Twitch. And leave those notifications on so you can find out when we go live. And also, please don't forget, join us October 27th. So that's 2 weeks from today, where we're going to be sitting down with the gameplay team, and we'll be doing a real big deep dive on the U.S. forces. So we had to reschedule this because of a Twitch issue, but we're really excited to show off this faction and talk about how they're going to work in multiplayer. And we're also going to be able to show some of those latest visual changes that Lydia was talking about, and show you how far the game has come along. So Lydia, before we say goodbye, any final thoughts, any parting words for everyone watching at home?
I just want to say thank you to everyone out there, and anyone who's watching this obviously cares about this franchise and cares about this game, and please keep giving us feedback. And thank you so much for being part of the team. And it's going to make the game even better. We can't wait for everyone to play it. And then I want to say, like, I thought I'd get harder questions today, but give the gameplay team, give them really hard questions, and make them work for it.
Make them sweat. Yeah.
Yeah, make them sweat.
Okay. Thanks so much, Lydia. Thank you, everyone, for watching this. And we will see you in 2 weeks for that U.S. Forces deep dive. So we'll see you then.
Thanks, John.